Come on, people now. Shine on your brother. Everybody get together. That is quite the contraption down there. It is horrible. Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. And before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the life and legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham was a stalwart defender of conservative values, a staunch ally of President Trump, and a devoted public servant, and he spent decades fighting for the country that he loved. His sudden passing is a tremendous loss, not only for South Carolina, but for our entire Republican Party, but for our entire nation. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, his friends, his staff, and all of those who knew him and loved him. Senator Graham understood that freedom is never guaranteed. It must be defended at home and around the world from those who seek to destroy it. And for most of history, Americans could agree on one basic principle. Communism is evil. It crushes freedom, and it destroys prosperity. It gives enormous power to a small oligarchy who believe they know how everyone else should live. We didn't agree on everything. We understood that communism is the enemy of everything America was actually built to be. Sadly, not anymore. Today, communist candidates aren't hiding in the shadows. They are running openly and winning the seats. And they are preparing to bring their ideology to the United States Congress. Our guest today, Mr. Jimenez, knows exactly where that ideology leads. His family fled communist Cuba in search of freedom here in America. And in a moment, you'll hear directly from him. When people who have lived under communism warn us about what is happening, we actually should listen because they've been there, they've experienced it, and they fled to a better place called America. Because it's not just one radical person. It's not just two. It's in double digits. Actually, communists serving in the Congress of the United States of America. And that should actually horrify everyone. Because communism is not some fashionable theory dreamed up in a college classroom. It's already been tried, and we already know where it leads. And where does communism lead? It leads to breadlines in the Soviet Union, political prisons in Cuba, and starving children in Venezuela. Different countries, different decades, but same results. Communists have failed everywhere it has been tried. It's destroyed every nation unfortunate enough to fall under its control. Remember when the Berlin Wall fell? Remember that? Everyone ran to the American side, not the communist Russia side. Everyone ran to the side of freedom. But the left keeps insisting that this time somehow it will be different. Let me share with you, it will not be different. The slogans may change, but the consequences never do. And that's not some distant warning about what could happen years from now. It's happening right now in real time. Look at under communist Mandami. Look at his New York City, right? Remember he preaches everything's going to be free, free grocery stores, free rent. Ask Mayor Mandami what happened to rent in his beloved city of New York City. Let me share with you the facts, not the rhetoric, but the facts. The median asking rent is now almost $5,300 a month in Manhattan and $4,300 a month in Brooklyn. Guess what? Those are higher than before he took over with his communist ideology. Rents increased. Mr. Mondani, what happened to free rent? What happened to free? Last I checked, $5,300 a month is a heck of a lot more expensive than free. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? These are real life consequences of the communist experiment. Working families are actually paying the price. And what makes this moment even more disturbing is the contempt that these people have for the country they actually want to leave. Ms. Chevalier admitted that she used the American flag as a napkin. A napkin. The flag that has been draped over coffins of 18-year-old service members who never, ever got to come home. It has been carried on the battlefield, folded with reverence, and handed to families whose lives will never be whole again. For some families, that folded flag is the last piece of their loved one that they will ever receive. Around the world, people living under tyranny see that flag and dream about standing underneath it. Some risk their lives just for the chance to stand underneath it. And the Democratic Party, these people that they want to send to Washington, they want to wipe their greasy little hands with the American flag. Then there's Ms. Vang, a Democrat candidate for Congress who refuses to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and has turned her back on the American flag. That's nice. And now she wants to come to Congress? Are you kidding me? And the Democrats want to send her to Congress? No way. If you cannot face the American flag, you have no business representing the American people. If you despise the country, then you do not deserve to lead it. And if your goal is to tear down everything our founders built, Republicans will stand in your way every single day. This is no longer a debate between slightly different economic policies. This is a choice between freedom and tyrannical government control, between the American dream and the failed nightmare of communism, between the people who believe America is actually worth defending and the radicals who want to destroy it and actually seem embarrassed to represent it. These are all people who hate our country and everything that our country stands for. But you know what? I have great news for them. The beauty about living in America, the beauty about freedom, is they are actually free to leave. So if you hate this country so much, there's flights leaving every day. I welcome you to get on one of those flights and leave the country that you despise so much. Because as Republicans, we love this country. We love the principles that it was built on. And we want to stay and continue this country for our children and our grandchildren. The communist left wants to replace that with dependency, coercion, censorship, and oppressive government control over nearly every part of American life. We won't let that happen. We will defend this country, and we will make certain that communism never takes root in the United States of America. And now somebody who knows that, who has lived that, who has experienced both sides, Carlos Jimenez is here to speak on the actual effects of communism. I'll move the box.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And it certainly is a pleasure for me to be here to tell my story of how I got to be here, how I got to be a United States congressman. And it starts in 1959. We had a revolution. Fidel Castro promised that we were going to have in Cuba, where I was born, we're going to have elections in 6 months. Free and democratic elections in 6 months. It's 67 years. We're still waiting. We're still waiting. So the promise that a better life is to come and that you're going to have a free and open democracy is false. When you look at the Democratic Socialist agenda, it says that they want to eliminate the Senate, they want to eliminate the presidency, they want to stack the courts. Now, why would they want to do that? They want to do that so they create one body, which, by the way, the only people allowed to run for that body will be members of the Democratic Socialists, which is the Communist Party, which is what happens in Cuba, by the way. You can't freely run for the assembly. You have to be a member of the Communist Party, and the Communist Party apparatus has to approve you running. Okay, so there's really no democracy in Cuba. They promise you free health care, and they promise you great education. So let me talk about that. Health care is free in Cuba. You can't get any, but it's free. The hospitals are a mess. There's no medicine. The doctors, if you want to get an appointment, it takes you months to get an appointment. And so in Cuba, you actually do get what you pay for, which is not much. As far as education is concerned, Bernie Sanders goes, when he talks about Cuba, they say, well, their literacy rate is very, very good. Actually, the literacy rate in Cuba in 1959 was the 4th highest in the Caribbean and South America. Today, it's the 3rd highest. But that comes at a price. The price is you only get to read what they want you to read. You don't get to read what you want to read. Well, there's a reason why I'm here. The reason I'm here is that as a young boy, 6 years, I was in 1st grade in school in Cuba, and I asked my father one day, hey, why did you bring us here to the United States? And he goes, well, one day you came and you asked me a question about the United States and the Soviet Union, or Russia, and your answer taught me everything I needed to know because you were being indoctrinated. And in fact, I was being indoctrinated. I would carry a little red and black armband that I was part of the revolution. I would have a little stamp book, okay, to commemorate all the great things that the revolution had done. And then they were already cooking my brain about the revolution. And so my father said, is that what you think? I said, yeah, but where did you learn that? Oh, I learned that in school. Reminds me of some of the stuff we're hearing about right now. It's happening here in our country. And so he said, okay, we're out of here. And we're out of there. And you know what we came here with? $10 and a watch. Still have the watch. All right. And my father and my mother built a new life here in the United States because they wanted to give me freedom. Some other parents actually sent their children here by themselves, seeking freedom. Think about that, where you value freedom so much that you actually send your kids to another country to be foster parented and put with sponsorship so they can live in freedom. Those folks are known as Peter Pan. And there was a great program called Peter Pan Program where thousands of Cuban children came to the United States, sent by their parents, seeking freedom. The other thing that Lisa was talking about is we're free to leave our country. In Cuba, you're not free to leave your country. As a matter of fact, thousands of people have died in the Straits of Florida seeking freedom. If communism was so great, why would they risk their lives to get on makeshift rafts to try to make it to Florida, where there is freedom? Why? Because communism robs you of everything. It robs you of your opportunity. It robs you of your life. It's misery. Communists are correct in one thing. Everybody's the same. Everybody is equally miserable. That's the only thing that they gives you. And so, for those here that somehow say that socialism, by the way, when they say they're socialists, they're not. They're really communists, okay? Bernie Sanders is not a democratic socialist. He's a communist, all right? And so is Mandami. He's a communist, too. By the way, he kind of reminds me of a young Fidel, all right? With the smile. Don't let the smile fool you. They want to take everything from you. And look at their agenda of what they want to do. Now, there's a great saying that says, one picture is worth 1,000 words. Now, I got some pictures for you. Shows you about communism, okay? All right, so Mandami says he wants to control the means of production. So, East Germany. This is a 1963 East German Trabant car. one of the worst, if not the worst car ever made. By the way, if you were an East German, you'd wait in line a couple of years to get one of these beauties, okay? Now, right over the wall, same people, Germans, okay? We're building this thing, a Mercedes-Benz, which, by the way, you could buy anytime you wanted to. You didn't have to wait years to get it. So, I think, let me see that turbine again. I'll take this one over this one anytime. But that's what Mandani wants to do. He wants to control the means of production. This is what you're going to get, by the way. If you're lucky, you get one of these Trabants. If you're not, sorry, you got a bicycle. All right, that's about what you're going to get. So, let's go to Cuba. This is where I was born, okay? This is La Época, which is basically the Macy's of Cuba in 1959. This is La Época today. A little different, right? All right, so now we're going to go to a theater, all right? So this is Villa Blanca. This is a theater in Cuba, a very famous theater in Cuba in 1959. This is what it looks like today. So communism brings you. All right. Next, we have the National Hotel. No, that's not it. The National Hotel. No, the National Hotel. Where is it? Okay. The National Hotel in Cuba, 1959. Also, you can see the Cuba as it looked like Havana, what it looked like in 1959. This is what it looks like today. Not much has happened in Havana since 1959. And by the way, if you look real close, you're going to see 1957 cars running around in here from the United States. Still running, okay? But the ingenuity of the Cuban people. By the way, the Cuban people are very successful all around the world. There's only one place that they don't succeed. Cuba. This is Miami in 1950s. Now, most Cubans went to Miami, all right? This is what we call home. This is my hometown. This is the city I love. 1950s. Miami today. Same people. Different system. Skyline, Miami, 1950s. Skyline today, Miami. Hell of a city. Built by the same people. Yeah, we had help. Some Americans are there, I think, okay? But thank you for helping us, okay?
At least we get it.
Freedom. Now finally, something a little bit closer to home. This is where I lived, in Havana. It is a condominium. It's called Rio Mar. It was designed by my uncle, actually, all right? And so my family lived there half the year, and the half the year we had a ranch in Oriente province, all right? This is where I lived. This is what it looks like today. I got a better picture. This is what it looks like today. By the way, there are people living here. That pool right there, you see on the bottom? That's where I learned how to swim. That's what communism brings, okay, to you. Now finally, freedom brings the light. Communism leads you into darkness. And there's no better picture to show you than what Cuba and Florida looks like from space at night. You think I'm a little emotional? Yeah, damn right I'm emotional, all right? Because my family came here seeking freedom. And I'll be damned if I'm going to have to pack up my family to look for freedom somewhere else. By the way, where are we going to go? And so, yeah, bring it on. I'll fight the communists to the death because I know what it brings. I know the future it will bring to my children and my grandchildren, and it's a pack of lies. And people that believe in this ideology are one of two things. They're either idiots or they're evil because they want to take your freedom away. And for those that are too young to understand what communism really is, hopefully those pictures will show you exactly what it is. They have destroyed my home country, utterly destroyed it. But they haven't destroyed the spirit of the Cuban people. And I look forward to the day when we can say that will no longer be true. We're waiting to go back to rebuild that beautiful island and make it again. That island had the second highest standard of living in the Western Hemisphere, right behind the United States. Today, the standard of living is below Haiti. And so, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. We're ready to go back. The Cuban people have been asking for freedom, and July 11th was the anniversary of the July 11th movement that happened some years ago, a couple of years ago, where the Cuban people, the Cuban government, in order to stay in power, what did they do? They did what they always do. They went and beat up on the people that were out simply asking for freedom, and they put thousands of people in jail simply for asking for freedom. I don't think that's what we want in the United States. Thank you, and Lisa, give it back to you. Okay, thank you.
Wow, what a powerful tale that Carlos told. It's a cautionary tale. It's a tale of what really happens when people come delivering snake oil sales. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be free. Carlos told you, when Castro came in, we're going to have free and fair elections in 6 months. And it's over 60 years and they still haven't happened. And they won't happen as long as communists stay in power, because all they care about is power. And I don't think anything could explain what we are so concerned about here in America than Carlos Jimenez, who has truly lived the American dream. Fled a communist dictatorship. Luckily had wonderful parents who cared about him and didn't want him to have to come up in that kind of environment, wanted him to have freedom, wanted him to have opportunity. And you can't get that in a communist state, but you can get it in America. You can get it in America because you have leadership who still cares about freedom. This Republican leadership has fought every single day for those freedoms that make this country the greatest beacon for freedom and democracy in the history of the world. And there are some now who want to take that away, and they're getting into power. They want to get a House majority. We are not going to let that happen. You look at some of the candidates that Mandami has backed that espouse those same communist views that Castro brought to Cuba when it was a free and beautiful place. And they're still talking about that in these races, not just in New York, where you literally have a candidate who has such radical, extreme communist views that she deleted over 4,000 tweets. How crazy and radical are the things that you've tweeted that you have to delete, not 2 or 3 of them, over 4,000 of them, including things like, sure, she said she did wipe her hands on an American flag. She said she wants to not just defund the police, she wants to defund prisons. Now, is she going to take the criminals into her own house? Probably not. She wants them to go into your community. Mandami, with a smile, just a week and a half ago, in a record heat wave in New York City, told the citizens of New York to raise their temperature up to 78 degrees on their thermostat. I guess that's the warmth and collectivism of socialism that he talked about in his campaign. Not the kind of warmth people of New York were counting on. But that's how it starts. It starts where you can't raise your temperature over 78 degrees, and then they're going to come check and make sure you're not raising it over 78 degrees. Then they'll probably fine you, and then they'll probably try to put you in jail if you do it. That's what communism is. That's what we are raising their red flag over, because we're not going to let that red flag fly over this United States Capitol. That's what's on the ballot this November. Make no mistake. When you see these radical candidates, when you see somebody like Diana DeGette, who nobody would call a moderate, I'm a good friend with Diana, served with her in the Energy and Commerce Committee, kind of a traditional liberal Democrat, got beat by a communist in Colorado. Somebody espousing those same views. That's what's on the ballot this November. It's no longer reserved to just the city of New York. They're trying to spread it all throughout the country. And ultimately, the American people will decide that in November. Are we going to hold on to these great principles of freedom that make America the best place to live, the place that people want to come to? Or are we going to allow communists to change it in an unrecognizable fashion, in a way that we'll never be able to come back from? We cannot let that happen, and the American people will not let that happen. So we're going to continue doing our work. We have a lot of work still to do. You're going to see this week the Budget Committee move the beginnings of Reconciliation 3.0 out of committee. And we're moving more bills through the floor this week, another appropriations bill. But at the same time, we are also continuing to raise the alarm that on the other side of this strong House majority, House Republican majority fighting for freedom, are now communists who want to change everything and take away those freedoms. And they espouse hatred of America, shamelessly, on the heels of our 250th anniversary celebrating our freedom. Where would they choose? And I think it's a good question for any of y'all to ask them. As they talk about all the things they hate about America, ask them what their ideal country is. I think it's a very good question to ask. Who's number one? If this place is so bad that they won't leave, they have the freedom to leave, they won't leave, they can. They should, if they hate it so much. But if this place is so bad, who is that place they aspire us to be? I think that's a fair question to ask, because it'll also tell you everything you need to know about them. We're not going to let that happen. And the man leading the charge to preserve freedom and democracy in this great Congress is our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you, Carlos Jimenez, for sharing your incredible life story. Thank you to Chairwoman McClain. We're a little more animated these days than normal. I brought a little fire to our House Republican Conference meeting this morning because I feel like Carlos does. I believe everything is at stake right now. This isn't campaign rhetoric. It's not hyperbole. You see what's happening around America. I am often reminded these days of the writings of the founders, the warnings of the people who put together the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. They warned us against times like this. In more recent times when we were kids, in the 80s, Ronald Reagan used to remind us all the time. You hear me repeat it. You have to understand freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It is not passed along in the bloodstream. Reagan said it must be fought for, it must be protected, it has to be taught, passed along to the next generation, so that they too will understand these principles that hold us together. I'm somewhat of a historian. I'm a constitutional law attorney. I know many of you we're all amateur historians here. You must be if you work on Capitol Hill. You watch and follow these developments. There's a small number of times in the history of America where the actual experiment in self-governance was on the ballot. The idea that we would preserve a constitutional republic, one nation under God, a government of, by, and for the people, all that is in question right now. For the first time, really, in my lifetime, this is a real question the American people have to decide in November, in a midterm election for Congress and Senate. It's not something that we would have projected. I hoped and prayed it would never come to this, but here we are. The barbarians are in the gate. Last night I did a little, had a big group actually of VIPs that I took on a tour. I don't get to do that very often anymore, but took a tour of the Capitol, a quick one. We wound up on the House floor, and I pointed to them, as you may have heard me reference this often, I think of it a lot. Why did Congress put In God We Trust above the rostrum of the Speaker's podium there in the center of the House? It's inscribed in the marble, as you know. You can't miss it when you walk in the chamber. It's the first thing people notice when they walk in at eye level and see it there. And I pointed out that in the Visitor's Guide to the House, it explains that. It says it was put there in 1962, and it says in the Visitor's Guide, it's been published for many years, it said Congress voted to place that there as a rebuke to the Soviets because of their philosophy during the Cold War. What was the philosophy of the Soviets? It's what Carlos just outlined, same philosophy of Cuba. The brutal dictatorship there that robbed him of his childhood, and so many countless others. They've lost their lives trying to flee from that brutal dictatorship. The philosophy of the Soviets during the Cold War was Marxism, communism, socialism. That's the thing. And when Congress voted in 1962 to put that there, it was right after your childhood, in the late 50s, when the Castro took over and destroyed Cuba. It was a completely foreseeable result. We were fighting it during the Cold War on distant shores in the USSR. And Congress was resolute on that. They were all united, and they understood that that's not who we are as Americans. The reason we are the greatest nation in the history of the world, the most free, most successful, most powerful, most benevolent. You hear me say it all the time. The reason that we are the greatest nation is because we were built on an entirely different and opposing set of values. Congress put in God We Trust above the rostrum because they wanted to remind everybody who would ever serve in this body in Congress that there is a huge distinction between us and the Soviet philosophy. Communism, Marxism, socialism, all this begins with the premise that there is no God. It's a totally different philosophy. And our declaration that we just celebrated, 250 years on July 4th, the nation's creed, as you hear me talk about all the time, the second paragraph, we hold these truths to be self-evident and all men are created equal. Our rights come from our Creator God. They do not come from the government. The communists believe the opposite. They believe that the government is, the state is God. The state is the one that gives you all your rights. And you know what? The state can also take those rights away. And that's exactly what happens. It's inevitable. Communism and this philosophy has led to the murder of tens of millions of innocent people in the 20th century alone. It is a nightmare. It is a trail to certain death, okay? And that's why we're speaking in such stark terms, because we need America to wake up. We're not even, look, 35 years ago, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, when I was coming up and, the Reagan years, they were fighting communism on a distant shore. Now it's here. But in Congress, they all agreed on that. They obviously knew that we had to fight communism. And so what they were doing here for domestic policy, that was foreign policy. Domestic policy, they were arguing over, marginal tax rates and the shades of regulation and how large the government should be. There wasn't a huge difference, a chasm between the two parties. Those days are gone. Right now, domestically, we are arguing, we are debating, we are fighting. The election will be over whether we're going to maintain our freedom in a constitutional republic, the greatest experiment in self-governance in the history of the world, the longest surviving constitution on the planet, the nation that everybody wants to emulate, and everybody wants to come here. We have to seal our borders so they won't flood over them. We're the only nation in the world that has that distinction. We're the last great superpower. We are the greatest nation in the history of the world. We are fighting right now in Congress over whether we're going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic or we're going to trade that in, dismantle the foundations, and go down this dark road of death to communism. That is the question on the ballot this fall. Now, the DSA published their platform. I hope you're all covering. I hope you're writing in depth about their platform. I read it out at an event a few weeks ago, and they made an ad mocking me reading their platform. Now, they didn't put the clips with the worst parts of it. Representative Jimenez just told you, Carlos told you that, well, of course they want to pack the Supreme Court, and they want a unicameral legislature. They want the House to run everything, abolish the Senate, because they believe the House would be run by Marxists, communists. They'll be able to run the table and everything. They want to remove the president. What they also want to do is abolish all borders. They don't want any borders. They want mass amnesty granted to anyone who can come onto our shores without exception, even for terrorists and hardened dangerous criminals. Okay? They don't want prisons. It's in their platform. They want to remove the carceral state, they said. No prisons. They don't want to fund the police. This is not a game. Everybody needs to understand. These crazy little mini Mamdanis who are popping up all around the country, they were a danger to you and your family. This is not a game. If they promise you free stuff, there is far more beneath those promises that even some of these people do not understand themselves. And so we are here as the Republican Party to stand on the founding principles of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is our duty to do that. And we're doing it on behalf of all of you, even the journalists who don't agree with our policies all the time. You better agree on these principles, because this is what keeps you free. By the way, it's what keeps the press free, okay? This is essential for your well-being and your family. This is not a game. This is not our father's Democrat Party. We're not arguing over marginal tax rates anymore. We're arguing over whether or not freedom is going to survive. And that's why we're so serious about this. Look, I'm a happy warrior, man. I like to get up and have fun, but this is not a fun time. We're in a war. We're in a philosophical war to save the greatest nation in the history of the world. And we take it very seriously. So we recruited extraordinary candidates. We are raising record amounts of money that is necessary to win these elections. And we understand everything is at stake. Ronald Reagan used to quote Abraham Lincoln, and he reminded us that America is the last best hope of man on the earth. As was asked here very well, very articulately this morning, if not here, where? There is no answer to that question. This is the best. Not a perfect nation. We're still in a process of making a more perfect union. But we are working every day to ensure that the principles of individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law and peace through strength and fiscal responsibility and free markets and human dignity are maintained, because that is the formula that makes a successful, free, happy people and a successful nation. I'll take a few questions. Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion about what's going to be included in this reconciliation bill. Can you walk through how important and how imminent it is that the Pentagon needs additional funding and what that number precisely is going to be in
The question was, can you list the specifics of what the request is for the Pentagon? We've seen it's over $350 billion as a request. And some of this is transformational kind of funding that will help us change the dynamic of the Department of War and make it more efficient and effective. It's already the greatest fighting force on the planet, not even close. But there are some ideas, a real vision on how to improve that even further, to bolster that. You heard the President talk about how he wants to effectively double the funding for national defense. Look, we live in dangerous times. We're fighting communism on our own shores, and we're fighting evil terrorists and tyrants around the world. And we have to be able to protect our national security. So this is not the place to get into the details of that. We're having a briefing tonight at the Pentagon with House Republicans, where Secretary Hegseth and his team will go through and outline a lot of this. Much of that's going to be classified, of course. But I can tell you that our resolve is to ensure, if there's a list of responsibilities of the federal government, and it is a small list, the appropriate list of what the federal government is supposed to be, remembering in our matchless system, under our constitutional system, most of the power is supposed to be reserved to the states and the people. But there's a few lists of responsibilities that must be done by the federal government, and obviously national defense is one of them. It is the first priority to protect the people. By the way, in his State of the Union a few months back, the President asked that very important question of the body. Hey, stand and applaud if you think the number one job of the federal government is to protect American citizens and not illegal aliens. Every Republican stood for long applause. Every Democrat sat scowling on their hands. That's everything you need to know. A picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth even more. Go replay that. We're going to take care of national defense. We're going to meet our first priorities. We're going to do it in the order that we can gather the votes for. Reconciliation 3.0 is in process. There will be a markup this week. I was on the phone with Chairman Harrington until late last night. We're working out the details of that. I'm expected to be noticed today for a markup on Thursday. And you will see the details of that, and I'm not going to unveil it here at a press conference this morning, because we're working through with members, as you know how this is done, to build consensus so we can lay that out. So stay tuned for more on reconciliation.
The ICE agents who killed the person in Maine yesterday were reportedly not using body-worn cameras, and that's despite DHS officials coming to Congress and repeatedly saying over the last few months that they want to expand body camera usage. Does there need to be accountability on DHS from Congress here?
I don't know anything about this event. Okay, I was a little busy yesterday, so I'm going to reserve judgment. I know that there was a tragic shooting, and I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know. And you guys can mock me for not knowing that. I worked about 22 hours in the last few days, and I did not get the briefing on that yet. I will this morning. Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. Do you commit to putting Lindsey Graham's Russia sanctions bill on the floor of the House?
We've long supported a Russia sanctions bill. The vast majority of the Republicans do, and I was heartened to hear that apparently Senate Republicans in the White House have come up with a formula that they think will work, and we're happy to receive and process that. I think it's appropriate. I've always felt that way. So yeah.
Last question, guys. On Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, the president says that the MOU is dead, hostilities are back on, and says the 60-day clock is just reset. Is it time to consider an AUMF vote? And when it comes to the toll that the U.S. is reportedly going to be charging, is that really proper? I mean, in the past, the administration has said there should not be a charge, and now 20%.
I'm going to let the White House answer to that. We're still waiting for the details on the toll idea. I was with the president for about 3 hours yesterday. We talked about it very briefly because we had a lot of other things on the agenda. I think we're waiting for the details and we'll determine that. With regard to the Strait of Hormuz, there is a memo of understanding. But Iran seems to have no interest whatsoever in maintaining any of those provisions. And when they are firing on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, it's a danger to all freedom-loving people around the world and the economies of almost every nation on the planet. And so the response from America is appropriate. What do you do with these people? Listen, they're not good faith actors. They cannot be trusted. The people that are in these negotiation rooms, as the president said himself yesterday, they will say one thing and literally walk out the door and do the opposite. So it's a very sticky situation there. When you're trying to have a negotiation with someone who you know is lying to you to your face. That's the challenge we have, and we trust the administration is going to continue to work to resolve this. We need to, we want to, of course. I'm heartened the gas prices have not risen again. We're about $70-something a barrel last time I checked. We need to keep that under control, and commerce in the Strait of Hormuz is important. There's at least, by my count, dozens of nations, scores of nations probably at this point, who are willing to assist, I think, if asked, to help police the Strait of Hormuz, so we'll see how that develops. I think it's a job for everybody. I'm going to defer for closing comments to Carlos Jimenez because there's something on his heart, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, the speaker made mention of the fact that the Democratic Socialists are promising to defund the jails. That's a lie, and I'll tell you why. The lie is that not only will they keep the jails, they'll add more jails. And the jails will be for those political dissidents that are willing to express their views. In Cuba, the Constitution says this. Today's Constitution says there's only one party that's allowed, and it's a Marxist, Fidelist, as follows Fidel, and Leninist ideology, and that if you even express an opinion otherwise, that you want some other kind of government, you are considered a traitor, and then subject to death. And so anybody, just ask all the folks that went out on July 11th a couple of years ago, what happened to them? Their prisons were opened up and they were put in prison. So it's not that the prisons are going to go away. You're going to have more prisons. Soviet Union under the KGB, the East Germany under the Stasi, and then Cuba today under security forces. They have plenty. They had and have plenty of political prisoners in prison.
Thank you. Thank you.
Every
Please be watching. Relax.
Oh, just, yeah. Here's how it works.
Very, that's all.